If Special Forces selection was just a fitness test, a lot more guys would make it. What really separates people is how they think under stress, how they handle setbacks, and whether they can solve problems when things start to fall apart. And in today's episode, I want to walk through some of these skills that you can start developing right now to put yourself in a position to succeed. And I'll get into a few of the questions that you guys sent over this week. Welcome back to the Infinite Grit Podcast. Welcome to the Infinite Grit Podcast. This is the show for those preparing to earn their place in special operations and other elite tactical careers. We break down the training, mindset, and strategies required to get selected and continue performing long term. These are proven principles to help you build the body, the mind, and resilience to step into the fight. During my selection class, the guy who was the most physically fit, like number one on all of the runs, number one on all of the rucks, absolutely destroyed everybody during the trek, did not get selected. He was a 21-day non-select. And this is a clear example that you don't get selected for special forces based off of your PT scores. It's like one of my favorite comments I get online is guys saying, oh, I would walk through selection because I'm so physically fit. I would crush selection. Like, they don't understand that selection just gets your foot in the door. It supports your performance during land navigation, during team week, of course, but it really just enables you to demonstrate the traits that they are looking for. So in today's podcast, we're going to be covering some of the traits that I think are important to start developing right now going into it. Number one is going to be composure. You have to be composed not only throughout the entirety of selection, but as a guy on a team. You're going to be jumping out of planes. You're going to be going into shoot houses, needing to conduct operations or needing to conduct specific tasks while there's flashbangs going around, while guys are shooting a foot away from your head. Like, there's going to be many stressful environments that you find yourself in where you have very specific tasks that, support the overall objective of the team. And if you don't do it, stuff starts to fall apart. So you have to have that composure. And I think the composure starts with the ability to handle pain. And this is going to be reflected during gate week. When you start doing your runs and your rucks through the sand and, rolling hills of Camp McCall. And when you start, doing the CRA and picking up the sandbag, all that stuff, I think there's a big misconception because we talk about physical performance and getting your numbers so high that guys think we do this so that you don't experience the pain at selection. That's completely false. You are always going to experience pain at selection. Doesn't matter how fit you are going to be pushing yourself. And if you're not experiencing the pain, then you're probably sandbagging, you're probably holding yourself back, and there's a potential that you get dropped for doing that because the cadre can see it. So maintaining composure with that pain, being okay with it, understanding that it's part of the process is the number one thing. So when you guys go out on your runs and rucks during training and you feel that pain in your shoulders, don't complain about it and ask, oh my gosh, I'm screwed because anytime I put a 45, 55 pound pack on my back, my shoulders start to hurt. Like, yes, it always will. And our ability, our strength will increase and improve, but our ability to manage that pain and the composure in those circumstances is really the biggest benefit of that. Because I promise you, even after being on team for years and carrying pack, carrying kit, going through Afghanistan, like everything you do with a heavy pack on your back is going to hurt. So don't run from the pain, maintain that composure in it. Next is short memory. When you go out to land navigation, I promise you guys will get lost or turned around at some point. I did. And pretty much everybody I know did. We had a guy lose his rifle, spend 3 or 4 hours searching in that particular area for his rifle that he left leaning up against a tree, ended up finding it, and then found the rest of his points and was successful. He's about to graduate the Q course right now. So you have to have, composure in those circumstances when things start falling apart, when you don't know where you're at, things don't look recognizable in land navigation. When your apparatus starts falling apart, you have to maintain your composure, because if you get too stressed, you start rushing your decisions, making bad situation worse. You jump down guys' throats, rubbing people the wrong way and end up getting pink card. You have to maintain your composure in those circumstances. And then the last portion of composure is not thinking so far ahead.
not overthinking situations, not looking at all of the stuff that you have left in selection on a consistent basis. You're just taking it one task at a time, maintaining composure and being able to kind of take an objective look at the situation versus having this like woe me kind of attitude or complaining to guys in the barracks. That's like the quickest way to get guys around you to not like you, is you complaining about everything or saying, I don't think I did this. I'm not going to get selected because I didn't run fast enough on this run or ruck. Like everyone is there kind of worried about themselves. If you're always the guy complaining or stressing out or dumping your anxiety on other guys, it's not going to be a good look. And number 2 is going to be problem solving. Like I said, you have to maintain your composure in those circumstances where things start falling apart, but you have to continue to seek a solution. When, during team week specifically, when the apparatus starts to fall apart, like you can't be the guy that just takes a back seat and lets everybody else do it. When you're out on your own in land navigation, like nobody is going to come solve that problem for you. So you have to be able to stop, be present, get your breathing under control, get your anxiety lowered, and then focus on seeking a solution to the current problem that you have. Because I promise you, like even in special forces, there was never a single operation, whether it was in Afghanistan or in training, that went 100% according to plan. Everything you do in the military in general or in special forces will have many failures, setbacks, or at least changes to the original plan, and your ability to solve those problems is absolutely crucial. And then number 3, which I think is one of the biggest, most overlooked skills that guys can develop, is communication skills. So like special forces is a human game. You have to work with other individuals. We've talked about being an introvert. I consider myself more introverted than extrovert, although I can step out of that when need be. And if you identify yourself as that introverted person, like you have to have that willingness and the skill set to be able to communicate and step out of that when the situation calls for it. But number 1 with being in selection is like, don't be the weirdo in gate week that puts himself in between the beds, the bunk beds inside of the barracks, isolates from all the other people. Like use that as an opportunity to get to know the people around you, because I promise you, everything, including land navigation, when we were out there chilling with the buddies in the woods. It's winter classes right now, so you guys are going to be hanging out around a burn barrel when you're not actively navigating. During team week, it's going to be much easier if you know the guys around you. So use those as opportunities to ask questions, get to know guys. Don't freaking anxiety dump on them, but develop those skills on the front side so you can employ those when you get to selection. And one thing I always say with team week is to treat team week as a combat operation. Like how do you think you should act in a circumstance if this was combat? Because that's really what the cadre are looking for. They're imposing a shit ton of stress on you to see how you might perform in a combat situation. If someone messes up and drops an apparatus or starts to fall apart, are you going to yell at him in a combat operation? Are you going to jump down his throat, belittle him, or do something like that? Are you going to say nothing and let it continue to get worse when there's potential threats around you? So the answer is usually somewhere in the middle. And if you have your mind switched on to this is a combat operation, head up on a swivel, I'm looking for work, usually guys tend to find the better answer for those particular circumstances. And this is something that I challenge a lot of you guys with. I talk to you guys all the time, and many of you guys are pretty solid with it, but there's a lot of guys that can really use some help on their communication skills. So yes, read books, like How to Win Friends and Influence People. One of the things I talk about is searching for those golden nuggets that you can implement in conversations immediately, but you have to be able to step out and actually seek the opportunities to implement that information. It could be as simple as when you order a coffee at a coffee shop and they hand it to you, you look them in the eyes, smile, and say thank you. Like there's so many people that shy away from it, that look down at the ground, that turn their shoulders away, that just aren't very personable. And all of those subtle things that are actions that we could consciously control with a little bit of intentionality are what makes somebody a good communicator. So on the front side right now, as you are prepping up for selection, you're doing your training, your nutrition, all that stuff. Look at these skills and see what you need to integrate into your life. If you need to, have some conversational frameworks that you can employ at work or maintain composure when things get stressful at work or whatever you're doing right now, start doing that, because all of these developmental things that we implement, the intentionality behind it is going to lead to the traits that's going to allow us to be successful in this environment. And then last but not least is knot tying. A little bit different, but I think it's often overlooked. I overlooked it myself when I went to selection. I couldn't tie knots for shit. But if you are a guy who gets the team week and you are able to tie knots well, you are one of the guys that the team can rely on. And I promise you, if you are jumping in there, you're tying the knots well, you're helping build the apparatuses because you have this experience. When it comes time to rate your peers or give pink and blue slips, you will be kind of on the top of mind for helping out the team in a positive manner. So some knots that you can learn is the square knot, water knot, square lashing, diagonal lashing, and the clove hitch. If you learn those 5 knots and you just practice them prior to going to selection, you'll be in a pretty good spot. I recommend going to Amazon, looking at 1-inch tubular nylon. It's like a green nylon, getting that, and then you just practice it, in the house while you're chilling on the couch, whatever. Just getting reps with those knots is going to help quite a bit. So those are the things that we can start doing right now outside of the training, kind of that personal development side of the house, to get the traits and possess those traits so we can demonstrate them inside of selection and not end up like, the guy in my class who blew everybody out of the water physically, but did not get selected. They are looking for the right guy, not just the fittest guy. Now we got some questions that you guys sent over this last week. First question is, how do you stay composed and not get overwhelmed with all the demands going into SF and meeting the standard? Number one is, I want to attack that last portion of the question. He said, meeting the standard. We don't ever want to say things like meet the standard. Everything we do, we want to exceed the standard. And there's, that kind of goes back to like all the fitness changes inside of the Army. Oh, the AFT is changing. Oh, we have to deadlift more, or 2-mile time, whatever. Who gives a shit? Like, if you are someone who is striving for the bare minimum, then yeah, you might need to be worried about those PT tests a little bit. But none of us should be striving for the bare minimum, especially if you want to go do something like special forces or go to the Ranger Regiment. Like, they have to put a standard out, but that's not what we strive for at all. So get that thought process out of your head right away. But I know it can seem overwhelming with selection prep. But I want to kind of distill that down a little bit. Right now, we talked about some things that we can implement in our lives and conversations, in our self-development, those types of things. But when we really distill down what needs to take place to be successful and put ourselves in a position to succeed at selection, it's not much time on a daily basis. There's not a ton that we need to do. If we're spending 4, 5, 6 hours a day on selection prep, like, it's probably too much. You're probably going to burn out before you ever get there, and you're going to start resenting the pipeline before you ever step into it. So what I recommend is come up with your daily non-negotiables. I need to get my training session in. I need to eat well. I need to sleep well. Like, that's it. If you accomplish those 3 things and you do so consistently, you go to bed, at a relatively consistent time, you cut out caffeine earlier in the day, you get your meals in, you get your runs, your rucks in, your lifts, like all of that stuff, it's like 2 hours a day max, and a little bit of intentionality with not scrolling till midnight. You're going to be doing the things necessary to put yourself in a position to succeed if done consistently. The big word is consistently. A lot of times guys try to stack in so much shit into their day or their training regimen because they think that this stuff is being productive, and they'll have these 20-step morning routines, and they think they need to cold plunge every day, and they need to get to the sauna, and they need to do this and that. And it just gets in the way of you doing the big mover work that is actually going to move the ball forward. If you want to add that stuff in after this stuff is already accomplished and you have the time, and it's not something that you have to do or you're going to feel like shit, like, okay, but this is the stuff that you're going to get the 90% results with. So prioritize it. Next question is, what were your favorite training / simulation events you participated in as an actual Green Beret? There was a couple, and actually on the live call when they dropped this question, I responded with a different one, but one of my favorites that we went to was horse training. So we did 2 weeks of horse training. The first week was just like general horsemanship, getting time on the back of a horse. We did a little bit of pack training, and then it ramped up. We did some more pack training, and then it ramped up to a 16-mile overnight pack trip where we had, you're on the horse and then you're leading a horse that has like a 240 or a mortar tube on the back of it. So really cool opportunity to learn some different skill sets. And that's the thing about special forces that I always really liked. Like, it's not just ATAR schools or official military schools that you get access to or the opportunity to go to, but there's a bunch of these non-standard courses that you can either come up with on your own as a team, you can get the funding to and go to, and you get a lot of very unique opportunities that develop skill sets that you might not ever get otherwise. So that was definitely one of mine, my favorite ones. But I also did some medical training that was pretty freaking cool. But that's for another podcast. Number 3 is, I don't want to sound like a pessimist, but if you don't make it in SFAS, what other options does one have for special operations in the Army? Now, this is coming from an 18 X-ray prior to shipping out. And it's a normal thought, right? If you don't make it in SFAS as an 18 X-ray, you become needs of the Army. And majority of the time, because you are already at this point in time an airborne qualified infantryman, you will go to something like the 82nd or a regular Army unit and be an infantryman. Now, even in that circumstance, you still have the opportunity to volunteer for things down the road. You can volunteer to go to RASP. You can volunteer to go to PSYOP, civil affairs. Like, there's many different organizations within special operations that you can go to, but majority of the time, unless you quit at selection, you will get a return date. Most of the time it's like a 6-month return date. Sometimes it's a 12-month return date. If you were just like really immature or there was something really lacking, you might get a 2-year return date. But unless you quit, you're not really going to get an NTR or never to return. So I would say for somebody that really wants to be a Green Beret, and clearly, this individual does. I talk to this guy all the time. So, but for other guys who are going the 18X route, like, you are signing up for something that's, 6-year contract potentially. If you don't make it in that first selection class, which ideally you do, right? But if you don't make it in that first selection class, you have already demonstrated this level of commitment. Why wouldn't you just go back to selection after that time elapsed? So I would go to my unit. I would learn as much as I can, make the most of it, have a positive attitude. Don't be the guy that goes to your unit and says, oh, I failed out of selection, and make that your whole personality, but train up, go back to selection, and go crush it with the knowledge that you now possess from that initial experience. That's the thing. Like, we often think when we fail that we are starting from scratch. You're not starting from scratch. You only start from scratch one time. If you go into something again that you have a little bit of experience in, you are armed with that experience, that knowledge, that insider knowledge, that confidence, that perception of exactly what it's going to be, so that you can put yourself in a position to be more successful in the next time you go. So I would say go back to selection. But, in my circumstance, I failed out of EOD school as an 18-year-old private in the Army. And during AIT, I went to a brief where they showed, videos of guys fast roping from helicopters. And I volunteered for something that I really didn't know what I was volunteering for, and ended up in the 160th, which was a great opportunity. And I honestly wouldn't trade that experience for anything. I had such a good time over there. So if you keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, volunteer for stuff, are proactive inside of the military, like, you don't have to sit there in a regular Army unit. There are plenty of opportunities around you to continue developing and putting yourself in a position to do some cool stuff. Next question is, I have a sandhills map. Would plotting points and planning potential routes be a good practice in off time before SFAS? Absolutely. Kind of going back to the first question, like, Is this going to be a non-negotiable that we have to do on a daily basis that can get in the way or burn us out from doing the main work? No. But is it something that if you have some time on the weekend, it can be beneficial for selection? Absolutely. Task Force Voodoo, I think, has Sandhills maps, which is Hoffman training area, where you will do the STAR course on his website. You could get those. You could kind of study the map, learn 5 points, learn Puppy Palace, learn all of the, the bowling alleys, Scuba Road, all of those major landmarks, Lake Baggett, and start plotting routes and seeing how you would go through that route planning process, ideally using something like his book to check your work, or having a buddy kind of walk you through, or kind of, critiquing your route. It's very seldom, especially out at, Camp McCall, is the fastest way to get from point A to point B in a straight line, because the draws are so thick. There's so many obstacles, non or unnavigable terrain. Like, there's many things that prevent you from just going from straight A, or, from point A to point B in a very straight line. So understanding that is going to be very crucial. The thing I would say with that is, it'll be good for planning routes, for kind of coming up with your SOP that you take into that route planning process to slow you down and make sure that things are checked, measured twice, cut once type of thing. But it cannot replace the ability to terrain associate, because when we plan a route, the big value in it is getting into that environment and thinking like we had this image of what we thought it was going to look like looking at the map. And then we get to that environment and we see it's different than what we expected. And those experiences built up over time give you a more clear picture when you start to sit down and route plan. So absolutely, yes, it can be beneficial, but don't rely on it completely. And I would use some sort of checks and measures, like a buddy critiquing it, going off of the book, something that you're not just plotting straight lines and saying, oh, that's my route plan, I'm good to go now. Next question is, how do you balance training and also testing yourself? So typically we like to test our athletes every 4 to 6 weeks, depending on their specific timeline and where their numbers are at. We like to do this for a couple reasons. One, to give us the data that we are trending in the right direction, or identify if we need to make any particular adjustments to focus on something else. And two, to show guys their progress along the way. Because if you're not tracking your numbers or testing yourself ever, like with your run times, your 2 5-mile run times, and you're just running, it can be hard to maintain that consistency when you don't see the results of all of the work that you're putting in. So I recommend doing tests every 4 to 6 weeks. And then when you do that, kind of adjusting that particular week. So one of the things that I like to do, depends on the guy. I would say a lot of our guys run a 2 or 3 day split, meaning they have 2 or 3 strength sessions. And if they are doing an assessment that week, I will move the workouts around so they have a little bit more rest going into that assessment. So kind of take like a mini deload going into the assessment. So you're not just doing it at the backside of a heavy week, and then you go out there, you get half-ass numbers on an assessment because you're so sore, and then you're pissed off about your progress. Like, actually have a small, deload going into it, then go crush it, and then compare your numbers over time. And then that'll give really good data on what you need to focus on in this upcoming block. Next question is, would I hurt my gains if I add Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to training? Potentially. It depends on your timeline out. If you're like a year and a half out, adding some jiu-jitsu is not going to be a big deal. Typically, what I say is like within 6 months, especially depending, it's really situation dependent. Within 6 months, if someone is running like a moderate amount of volume, I would start to cut out jiu-jitsu. Maybe reduce the number of sessions you're doing per week, doing some light rolls, not doing like 100% sparring. But within those last 4 months prior to going to selection, I would completely cut out jiu-jitsu. Just not worth it. I promise you it's going to be there on the backside. If someone gets you with a heel lock or a knee lock and you freaking pop something or tweak something, like that can make a significant impact on your ability to be successful. And you don't want to take injuries into that environment. But 6 months plus beyond, you can include jiu-jitsu in the plan. Just make sure that you are not just doubling things up and then throwing jujitsu on top of it. I would probably use it as one of my conditioning days, maybe 1 to 2 jujitsu days per week, and then make sure that you still have the running volume inside the plan to get that leg turnover, the economy of motion, the impact resistance, because just doing jujitsu, just doing low impact conditioning is not necessarily going to transition fully to running and rucking. So we got to maintain that in there. Next question is, how can you get used to carrying a heavy load for distances without breaking your body in training? So one of the things that we like to do is have very short distances with very heavy weight, and build that weight up over time. So Tyler Miller, who is our kind of AFSOC or Air Force Special Warfare expert, has been using this in the CCT pipeline for quite a while, has a lot of good data on it. So I'm going to be bringing him on the podcast as soon as we can get him out to Arizona. And we're going to be diving into this a little bit further. But typically what we'll do is one session where it's shorter distance with much heavier weight, sometimes building up to 65, 75, even 85 pounds. And then one session with much longer distances, but lighter weight, 35, 40, 45 pounds. With those two in conjunction, not going super crazy, and actually being disciplined with keeping the distances short. Sometimes you can have guys like, oh, a mile's too, not long enough for this heavy ruck. I went and did 5 instead. Well, that kind of negates the purpose of keeping the recovery or the fatigue down so that we can make progress overall. So be disciplined with those shorter sessions, whatever they look like, if you're doing intervals, etc. And then having that longer sustained day where you're carrying a little bit lighter weight, but longer distances. And those 2 rucks per week, in addition to the strength training that you've been doing up to that point, and the running, is usually a good way to put yourself in a position to handle those heavier loads a little bit better. But that's all the questions I got today, guys. Appreciate you tuning in. Let's go have a great week. Happy Veterans Day, and I'll talk to you very soon.